of Sand by Geetanjali Shree. Translated by Daisy Rockwell. Part 2. Sunlight. Chapter 47. No, said the doctor. Beatty was answering each of his questions promptly, becoming more fearful at every response. It's easy to frighten those already frightened. Where had she gone wrong? Had she mistakenly considered Ma completely healthy, heedless of her advancing age? Beatty would come out of the guest room now and again to take a peek at Amma. If the bangles jingled from far off, or she heard the light switch go on in the bathroom, if Ma saw her, she would say, "Oof, go, I'm fine." If she didn't see her, then her daughter observed Ma's complete takeover of the bed. Beatty would smile, thinking, "See how contented she is with me." But what had happened today? It was as though fear had demanded Beatty learn a lesson. In the morning she had been standing making tea so the two of them could sit on the balcony, when Ma began sliding backwards, senselessly, ceaselessly, instead of moving forwards. "Are, are," sort of singing, laughing like a ship flowing backwards, flop flip, turning her sandals like paddles. A second or two became an eternity. Beatty set the tray down and jumped to shield Ma's body. But by then the body had lurched backwards, slid against the wall, and fallen to the floor. Beatty's hand sort of pulled Ma back, probably keeping her head from banging against the wall. But the rest was nothing but shock, because Ma was lying on the ground, staring up in astonishment, wondering what happened, to which she herself responded, "Arre, I fell." Beatty shrank back. She had grabbed but also failed to grab. "Did you hurt your head?" How could she lift Ma, suddenly heavy as a rock? Beatty dragged her along the ground, looking for something useful to help with the lifting. Ma's body left a wet mark along the floor. Was it sweat? Pee? She would slip even more on that. Beatty's fear was all encompassing. She simply couldn't lift Ma. Ma was now laughing guiltily. "You get out of the way. I'll get myself up." But if she slipped? Beatty ran to get a towel, wiped away the moisture, spread today's paper out on the floor. Ma looked around. What could she rest her weight on so she could pull herself up? "Get me a chair," she demanded. Ma dragged herself along to the chair like a baby, using the chair as a support. She somehow turned herself over, so she was back up belly down. Then two arms on the chair, two legs on the floor, and waited in that position to catch her breath. She had transformed into some sort of four-legged beast. Betty tried to give her a hand here or there, but Ma was lifting herself up on her own, like a nanny goat. Her quilted coat swung beneath her like a belly that's borne oodles of children. Betty was terrified. "I can't do anything on my own. Should I phone KK or Bade? But I can't leave Ma like this either." Ma's flipped body lay there long. Then she made a big push and lifted her hindquarters, gripped the chair one hand at a time, and scooted herself up, saying, "No, no, stop, stop, ah, ah," grabbed Betty and swiveled around slowly, after which she sat a long while right there on the chair, sprawled by the wall. Betty could have thought, "Look, after all those snipes about our low chairs." But all that was ground to dust now. Ma was able to get up. She said, "All is well." But my pinky got twisted, and in a fit of prominence added, "First I will bathe." Betty kept peering in. Ma, a tiny little cotton doll, unclad, steadying herself as she washed and wiped. Betty called the doctor. "She didn't get dizzy? She didn't faint? Does she have pain in her knees? Does her head feel heavy? Wet floor? She wasn't sweating? What had she eaten?" Does she feel a burning in her throat? Blood clot or blood pressure cataract, air pressure heart. The charts began to flip open. No, said the doctor. He suggested Beatty bring her to the hospital. Ma kept refusing, but Beatty took her to the hospital Buddy recommended, which was connected to CGHS, where she would have an examination and treatment under the government scheme. Chapter 48. Ma lay on the hospital bed. She was fine, but listless, as though to say, "You have put me back in bed." "Array, it's nothing," she said. She was embarrassed, peevish too. My sandal slid backwards and I fell. Mornings are a finial free for all in the hospitals. Outside the OPD, a group of sardars yucked it up. Loud congratulations, jests, and guffaws. When the doctor emerged and snapped, "This is a hospital," an elderly sardar held out a box of sweets. "Doctor Saab, I just had a grandson. Here, have a sweet treat." The sardar youths at his side raised their hands bili and did a bit of bhangra. When mothers fall, all the characters in a story come crashing in and gather in one place, in a single gust, or not so much a gust, but a slap. Whap, 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 whap. Everyone lurches in one direction. It's the same MO in all families. Everyone shares the worry, even if they are annoyed with one another, whether or not they get along. Ma is the tie that binds. Each person is a reflection of their own time, but also separate from it. A mirror has so many angles and bends and corners, so many unthinkables. One has no idea whose reflection one sees and how it came to appear there. If you don't know how to look at it crooked, you will never guess. In the silver of a mirror shines a silver of time, and in a snap of the fingers there is a span of time. And where the image seems to be steady, there, another snippet, another wrinkle, another baggy bit. The twisty turny crackle of the glass is also time. Every speed is also time, even if it's swinging, swaying, slipping, spinning, soaring, swimming. And women, what to say of them? They die daily, but live on in books. And everyone has arrived at the hospital hovering around Ma. And here she is saying, "Get me Rosie." Perhaps Bure misheard this as "get me a sari." Amma had fallen in her bizarro swishing canopy capey thing. For the first time since his sister's misspent youth, he now addressed her directly. Handing her a package, he said, "They are here. Take them out." And out came the saris. Bahu's eyes popped as she wondered when he had taken them from her wardrobe, and this in turn chaffed at an old wound. "My things are never mine. Whatever my in-laws want, they just grab. They didn't even let me raise my own children. They were entrusted to their aunt's care, or to the grandparents, and the house was a watering hole for the whole world. Do I even know what it's like to have a home of my own? My sister-in-law drops in to stay whenever she wants. Amma gives her my nightie without even asking and says, 'Just stay here overnight.' And on top of that, whoever feels like it just comes and sits in my window seat, where I like to sit and do my reading and studying while keeping an eye on the kitchen. And then they accuse me of no longer taking an interest in household chores. Then my sister-in-law sees the car and driver are setting out, and to save the petrol in her own car or scooter and using Ma as an excuse, she'll say, 'You should get Nor soup in the nearby market. It's organic.' Since she's so fussy about eating, let her have that. She just needs to drink it." And off they go. And she comes back after accomplishing a 10-minute task in an hour and picking up her dry cleaning and meeting and greeting, accomplishing God knows what all. She will jill out our car with petrol once every 100 days, and then dot 200 days. Ma will bring it up every chance and gets and mention that Beatty filled the tank. They are all so clever come here and serve their own ends and protect their own space as though it's sacred. They don't allow any interference in their own homes and work. Anyway, she lives such an outlandish lifestyle, no one would want to go near her. The whole history billowed up in Bahu's head like smoke, but on that sensitive occasion at the hospital, she kept her mouth shut. If you have to keep quiet but aren't quite inside, sounds come bursting out of other places. Ew, ick, look at the cobwebs on this window. Clean it off. Ugh, eeks. She won't eat this fodder, this sawdust. Come, Amma, enough. Now come home. Fuss, fuss. Oh my, you do amaze me. She will wear this sari here. Shocking pink. And she's got a hospital gown anyway. And amidst these voices, Bahu took out the saris and counted them to see which ones Bade had brought, and which of them were hers. 7 saris for the hospital? She exclaimed. So that's why she fell, Bade told the doctor. But the doctor disagreed. He kept asking all sorts of questions, none to do with saris. How is her vision? Check the eyes. Did she feel weak? Check the heart. The air pressure gets unbalanced. Check the ears. Why did she twist her toe? Check her bone density. She could be anemic. Blood, hemoglobin, platelet, thyroid. Look at all those. ECU, ENT, MRI. This test, that test. He wrote it all down. When he learned there's been stones in Ma's gallbladder on occasion, and that they had been removed in the past, an X-ray as well, to see if maybe there was some leftover swelling that might burst. Ma was plopped in a wheelchair. Age, the demands of age. Have her admitted. Look for a private room. She'll be comfy there. Run test. Ma had laughed when she fell, but now she was tired, getting all those tests done that had been proposed the moment they set foot in the hospital, and which took 3 days to complete. KK and Bade stood side by side, talking not to one another but to the doctors and nurses. Do you wink, Maji? Asked the doctor, reading the file. Sometimes, said Ma after some thought. When you sing, do you feel hoarse? Is it like singing in Khartal? But I don't sing, Ma said after some reflection. Is your coughing deep, mandra or soft, adhya or slow, and drawn out, vilambit? Tar saptak, high octave, said Ma, tuning into her thoughts. And if you itch your foot, Mata, do you lean over or lift your foot? I reach with my cane, Ma explained. Do you dream? He asked. A lot, said Ma. Check her. The doctor wrote down some more tests in some unknown language. He was the head doctor. The nurse spoke up. Dr. Sahib. At night she opened the register pages and double checked. Yes, at 12:03 a.m. and then again at 4:52 a.m. The patient whistled. What? Get rid of the whistle. She could get an infection. No, no, laughed the nurse. She whistles with her lips. Interesting. The doctor looked pensively at Ma for a moment, holding up his pen in indecision. But perhaps the whistle didn't seem an especially serious matter. Get it? It's got nothing to do with saris. He spoke dismissively to Bade, who wanted to discharge Ma and bring her home as soon as possible. Chapter 49. Draped in medical gowns, stethoscopes hanging, clutching files, they come and they go. They are giving her this pill, that pill, shots, even a saline drip. But this charge is in the hands of the head doctor who is coming in the evening if it's morning, or morning if it's evening. Bade will keep paying everyone will come and go all day. Betty will stay the night because her work is of the type, if it is work, that can be done anywhere. Everyone looks frightened and anxious. Betty looks depressed. I couldn't handle it alone, and if this is what was to become my lot, then I too should have done what others do. They who have the advantages that come with not living alone. Here, I have to deal with the disadvantages of being alone, but also the disadvantages of being with everyone by force of circumstance, without my having chosen so. Bahu is also upset. There's no one to share my burden. There is only one person who really listens to me. She steps out of the ward to phone him, the son who is there for her in her time of need, overseas son. From that distance, he worries about how to help and console his mother. We let her go somewhere for a few days, and then look, she had a fall. If she has to be cared for, we have to do it. Overseas son said, you should give Dadi electrol. She must have had a dip in her sodium. And take some yourself as well, every half hour or so. Ma, take a sip or two. You can't tell, but you can get dehydrated due to a shortage of electrolytes. Yes, son. Sometimes I feel sort of dizzy from all this doing and froing, and these days I can't even get to my yoga classes regularly. Mom told overseas son, feeling emotionally tired, defeated, cheered. Burry stood aside, sick with worry, but he felt relieved to find himself in his traditional role as he thought to himself. Now Amma will be with me again. I had all the tests done. Everything is fine. Straight home from here. The luster in his eyes, full of pride and duty, dimmed when Rosie Bua entered the hospital. That morning he had been in the same room with that fellow KK. Burry was somewhat taken aback that a girl from their fair and lovely family had been fated for this black-skinned Bengan Bhatt. Heavens, if she married this guy, who would the kids take after? Has she thought about that? And what if she got unmarried again? He doesn't seem very dependable. And now another scourge had arrived. Rosie strutted in, chest out. First off, she rebuked. I just found out today. I went to the house and the guard told me, what's this? You look so down. Baji, if you have got life, you have got love. If you have got zest, you have got zeal. Otherwise, end of the story, game over. The doctor and the nurse glanced up, then considered it better to bury their heads in their work. Rosie took a small comb from her purse and stood to one side. She unfastened her bun, stuffed her hairpins in her mouth, gathered up the windswept wisps, refastened her hair, and sat down by Ma's bed. 3 whole days, Baji. Rosie's eyes wide. She discreetly reached beneath her chunni and tight orange kurta with its black and blue flowers to adjust a twisted bar strap. You were missing yourself, you good for nothing. Ma smiled. Baji, Rosie's voice echoed. Good for nothings are the best. They always stick with you. It's the good for somethings that leave you high and dry. The nurse burst out laughing. She took Ma's temperature and turned to leave. How hot is our Baji? Asked Rosie. Normal. The nurse wobbled her head South Indian style. That's because I'm here. Hmm? All is normal. Now I'm here. I'll see to it. Otherwise, who knows what might have happened. I might have died. What else? Said Amma cheerfully. Baji. Rosie Bua turned with a sharp swish. It's not so simple. One must live through thousands of days to reach the dying day. The hallways of the hospital began to echo with aphorism of Rosie's, like favorite film dialogue. Her one must live through thousands of days to reach the dying day became as popular as Gabbar Singh's Are O Samba, Kitne Aadmi The. No one knew how the discharge papers were prepared, perhaps because Rosie was running about creating a spectacle in the hospital, or because the tests were all completed anyway and Barry only learned afterwards. Rosie had been doing the paperwork whilst Beatty took Ma and returned home. Barry's son ego was shattered again, and the most popular of all of Rosie's dialogues amongst the hospital staff was her very last quip when Baji had said, let Bade come back first, and Rosie had feigned incomprehension and cracked. What kind of Bade? Dahi Bade? as though Ma was waiting for an order of fritters bathed in yogurt. Chapter 50. People came running from all directions on Ma's return, to ask after her and bring her little thises and thats. The guard opened the gate and salaamed. The gardener opened the car door, the cleaner, the car polisher, the newspaper man, the maids, and the other drivers and residents of the society coming home from the offices, all stopped by. It was nothing, my children forced me to go. I agreed just to make them feel better, quoth Queen Ma. Age is treacherous, always up to mischief. People sympathized. What age? Exclaimed Betty. The doctor was asking what does she eat? She's got the heart of a child and the belly of an oldster, cracked Ma, twirling her cane and causing multicolored butterflies to dance on their heads. A sea of bodies formed a procession to deliver her to the flat. When they opened the door, Ma whipped inside like a whirlwind and rushed about getting all the windows opened, at which the squirrel hopped, the sparrow fluttered, the ant tiptoed on tiny feet, the rabbit rabbited, the deer leapt, the precious elephant waved its trunk, the cat padded, the mouse zipped in, and the dog ran out from behind the almirah, tail wagging and tongue out, slobber ready, all disguised as sunlight and wind. When Beatty saw so many bodies, something happened to her. Their scent, redolent with earth, sweat, soap, food, fragrance, oil, petrol, all tumbled together, went straight to her head. She snuck into the house, shuffling along, as though she was the patient returned from hospital. You didn't water the plants at all. The soil is completely dry. Ma chided as she pulled up a stool, sat down, and plunged her arms into the dirt, to grow back with the plants, to crackle back into her body. Chapter 51. And here we go again. A girl going on 16, not an old lady nearing 80. When a young girl bathes, she gazes upon her body, at the buds on her chest, the roundness of her navel, the growing corn silk on her pubis, with delight on her face, both bashful and lustful. There's mystery, there's fun, and if her own hand touches somewhere, then a thrill. It slides, glides, making light waves leap high, and then the "Ow, of Ma resumed. The hospital with all its poke stab has freshened the sensitivity and woundedness of the body. Grab an arm, thwack a back. She lets out a whimper. Ow! It hurts. It leaves a mark. Look, they gave so many injections at once. The nurse couldn't find the vein. She kept poking and prodding everywhere. A staining gel in one place, a needle stab somewhere else, a stinky ointment elsewhere. Everything aches, she said happily, rubbing a hand and an eye over her slackening, mottling, dangling body. Look, this grew at the hospital. My, Amma, do you really have everything memorized so you can tell what's new? Why not? Don't I know my own body? Look at this. Touch this. Hey, ah! Scratch rough edges, trying to smooth out and remove craters, wound blisters. The cure for which no doctor of any kind possesses, but Rosie does. She brought thorn-apple leaves and tied them over a mole. She rubbed potato skins on Ma's face. The house filled with odors and again grew garrulous. The wall pillar corner rattled and peered. Knock anywhere and check if you doubt. Ma's eyes bulged as she stared long, ascertaining that, yes, truly it has flattened. And look, look, the circle has shrunk a bit, and it's also paler, fluttering butterflies with her cane, totally unaware that her daughter was wondering, who cares who is going to see? Why do the young alone possess the right to passion for the body? As if one's life after youth is only intended, day by day and bit by bit, for sloughing off one's skin, growing more and more unconcerned, detached, non-desirous. 52. The body is a mystery. Betty pondered Rosie's, and as she watched Amma go down for a walk to the tomb, leaning on his arm, what is that body holding on to, Ma? One with pointy breast, which jump eagerly from behind the Orni when Rosie raises her arms, crossing a boundary. In the fine arts and in popular culture, it is a different body that crosses boundaries. Where the boundary is crossed, a confluence forms. Man woman mash up. Birju Maharaj and Kathak. Jai Shankar and Sundari. Shankar and Parvati. Their union forges magic, becoming other, making the other their own. Sitting legs tucked on one side in a womanly pose, Gandhi crosses a boundary. Lachu Chacha wins all hearts when he cooks. Lachu Chacha was always in the forefront with women during weddings. He fried puris and kachoris, and roasted and ground the spices for stuffed bitter gourd, tinda, and ladies' fingers. He covered his head with his dhoti, stretched out his legs in the courtyard, and for new mothers he poured ghee into the roasted wheat and gram flours, kneading them in a large thali with sont, gur, bura, gond, and nuts to make the large round satori which danced with his palms, and no one laughed at his effeminacy. In fact, new mothers felt revived by the fragrance of the laddus. Chacha, let me taste too, the men and children would demand. Chacha would laugh and ask them if they too had given birth. Then I will give you some, looking every inch in the grand matriarch, and happy titters bounced across the courtyard. But not at him, nor would anyone call him unmanly or a eunuch. They had great respect for him. He enthusiastically broke bread with the women after all the men had eaten, smearing each piece well with ghee, for he belonged to the joyous world of women. If you don't know Lachu Chacha, what would you know the gingery laddus, or Radha Pahalwan's lassi and cream, or Mausa's balushahi sweets, and Lalu Chacha's shakkarpare, Timaktau's millet kheer, Barnakku's imarthis, and the sweet La Wenglata by Nachikaki of the juicy curses, in which case you are soul deprived of the essence of all life and joy. But there is no need to reconstruct that era here, but rather tell the tale of one family, in which there are different kinds of bodies and emanations, different fragrances and ways, and one is flummoxed by those of the likes of Rosie and Betty, who is realizing her own incomprehension, and that she is losing sight of her own contours and becoming just an outline of herself, a faded sketch, just about visible, lots of her invisible now. Ma too has become newly embodied in the company of Witch Body Rosie. She washes her hair and comes out head wrapped loosely in a towel because Rosie has issued the edict that if you leave wet hair loose, the breezes spirit away the nutrients, leaving the hair brittle. Now she is loosely braiding her hair. Ma is seated on her chair and Rosie stands behind her, touching her hair. But with what fingers? Attached to a body, but what body? It's hardly nice to let anyone and everyone touch you. What else can Betty think? Come, baby, I'll do your hair too. You should make a loose braid, says Ma. Had she read this in the magazines that Keke kept bringing her, or was it again the lure of Rosie's sickly sweet concoctions? Yes, baby, your hair is dry as broom. The way you just coil it around like a snake on your head, hood up. I don't get to oil it, nor comb it, nor brush it. I can't find the time I need for work. What with all these new responsibilities that have invaded my routine? You people will only be happy once you have robbed me, bit by bit, of all my old ways. Betty remonstrated in her head. I'll make your hair so strong you'll be able to drag a plow with it and sow a field. Oh, yes, just what I always wanted. Plowing, farming, tilling, Betty said to herself sarcastically. Why not? Rosie winked, as though she had heard. Will the duck swim? She asked Ma, at which Betty stared at Rosie Bua like an idiot. What sense does that make? But Amma laughed as though she was in on the joke. What was all this topsy-turvy talk? Perhaps there was some clue to help Betty understand the turvy-topsy body. Strange how whatever one said of Rosie, the reverse too was also germane, like a body engaged in challenging all stereotypes and definitions, a body unrecognizing of the legitimacy of any borders, flowing this way and that. There was once a flowing river. A hermit was disgusted by a prostitute and scorned her, at which she retorted proudly, if I have followed my dharma, the river will switch directions and flow the other way. The woman pressed her palms together and performed the Mangal Archana, and when she opened her eyes, the river was flowing in the opposite direction. So the people will always be in a quandary over which direction is the right one, for only then can we know which is the opposite, in other words, wrong. But flow both ways, this way and that way too, on this side of the border and that one too. How then to be clear about anything? And where the water flowing this way meets the water flowing that way? And what is that moment, that fleeting moment of halting together before each resumes its course in the opposite direction? Chapter 53. The halting of Betty's body, when KK sneaks in, a halting that steps away and stands at a distance. KK is pleased. He had run into Rosie and Ma downstairs. I sent them to go wherever they wanted in my car. There's no one here, just you and me, and I have the key. Where? Betty is anxious. Here. KK pulled her close. Where is Amma? She asked between his forced kisses. A strange situation. If she completely pushes him away, he might be offended. But she is also annoyed that she has given up even the freedom of no. They're going to a festival by a lake, KK whispers between lustful kisses. Nowadays there is quite a bit of water there, he added, his lack of control growing. There's no water in the Yamuna. What lake has water? His lips felt dry and sticky to Betty. Get back. She pushes him away. Someone will come. A cat? A mouse? A crow? KK rolled her onto the mat. Amma, she tried to say. Is she hiding in here somewhere? KK's hands are insistent, joking on his tongue. She's everywhere, Betty's body said, but her voice burst out. Get away! What if she comes back? KK leaned over her. A long string of saliva fell from his laughing mouth onto her face, so stringy you could wrap it around your finger like a thread. The thread wrapped around KK himself, and he was deflated. A kind of revulsion leaked into the air. The two of them stood up, Betty embarrassed, KK petulant. She won't come that soon, he said, and began to straighten his clothing. What if they have forgotten something? Betty tried to speak normally. You are the one who has forgotten something. That is what we once were, and how you liked it. Well, he turned to go. I must respect your wishes, as though giving an assurance that he wouldn't force himself on her, but also an accusation. You no longer wish it. And she didn't. Her whole house and household was on the move, proceeding agreeably, amiably, properly, orderly, so that thing which they call desire, that is libido, had clicked its heels together and set out in search of more open terrain, longing for the razzmatazz of lightning and rain. Libido has no place in such an orderly household.